Welcome to the Founders Playbook, to show where we explore bold ideas, real world strategies, and the leaders shaping the future of business. Today's episode is From Friction to Flow, Streamlining Handoffs Between Sales and Delivery. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Casey Fox, co founder and VP of Technology at Tekletics. Casey's career path into tech wasn't the typical one. Over the years, he's built a mission-driven company that helps athletes, veterans, and career changes successful transition into IT careers. We'll be talking about his journey today, the work Athletics is doing to bridge gaps in the IT workforce, and most importantly, how companies can reduce friction when handing over projects from sales to delivery. Casey, I'd love to start with your story. What led you to technology and eventually to co-founding Athletics?
Yeah, no, hey, Vagif, I very much appreciate you giving me a chance to come on and talk about it. I grew up in West Virginia. I grew up in it's Mid Ohio Valley, right on along the Ohio River. Obviously bordered there with Ohio, but where I was from, it was all a lot of coal mining, a lot of industry, right? And that was kind of the path, right? You kind of get into one of those opportunities. There wasn't a ton of opportunity if somebody wanted to get into a tech career, but early on in life, I had a great mom, right, that would make sure that I was getting into technology and doing things, and would give me tutors. And I can remember had a computer that she was able to figure out how to get her hands on when I don't know, 12 probably. Which, every 12-year-old now has a computer, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But about 30 years ago, that wasn't a super normal thing, but, she figured out a way to get me interested. So I had an interest from an early age, kinda grew up into it. I got into school and I was a business major, but I didn't even necessarily think I'd do something technology focused when I got done. And I happened to get an opportunity in business intelligence and kind of flipped, right? I enjoyed it, and I kind of found my footing with that, and felt a lot of pain getting into it, right? Especially not having some of the background. But
Absolutely.
did that for now I've been in the workforce for about 20 years, and like I said, felt a lot of pain with that getting up into the career, but a lot of that experience. Then my partner, who he had a similar path, he's got a few more years on him than I do. He went through the same kind of thing, but I think a lot of that pain, a lot of that experience is taken to get successful with it. We apply that in what we do with Tekletics.
I was just going to ask you about what led you to actually be on a mission where you're helping the athletes, veterans, and career people to change their careers to IT. But hearing your story and the pain that you've been through, I think that's like the no-brainer route that you would have taken. So that definitely, I guess, answered the question that I had in mind. But I want to find out what problem in the industry are you guys looking to solve when you were you looking actually to solve when Athletics started?
Yeah. You know, when Tekletics started, and I've told people this before, but my partner played football at Arizona State. His coach was big into giving people, that was kind of the philosophy. His coach at the time was a guy named Frank Cush, right? And if you go out, it's called Frank Cush Field, right? That they've got at Arizona State. And he coached for the Colts for a while too, but legendary coach. And one of his one of his specialties was finding talent that isn't readily noticeable or available, right? He'd find kind of these hidden gems that were out there that he thought that, with his background and putting the right support network around, that you could build a successful football player out of that, right? And he had a ton of success with it, won a Rose Bowl with it, you know what I mean? So that mentality worked, but a lot of that goes into what we do with Techletics, right? It's about, okay, hey, somebody doesn't have a doctorate in computer science or artificial intelligence. Well, that's great. I want those people too, but odds are you or me or anybody else has a kid down the street that would be great in a tech career. They've either A, had somebody tell them that it's hey, this is not for you, right? For whatever reason, this isn't your thing. You really haven't put the time into this. You don't have the schooling or whatever for it. We've always kind of been of the belief that that's a bogus argument because if the person has the tangibles to be successful with it, then I can teach the tech, right? I can teach whatever the skill is, but I can't teach the person that's got really strong work ethic and they're innovative or analytical, right? I can't teach those things. That's something about that person. So that was kind of our theory in getting into this is we want to provide careers for people that have the aptitude to be successful in those careers and just need the chance, right? But that's us.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that totally resonates with a lot of people. And Tekletics has been operating for over a decade now, I believe like 13 years.
13 years.
So I'm pretty sure, yeah, so I'm pretty sure you've been through, you've been some challenges play out in many different client environments. I know you guys are doing IT consulting and workforce development at the same time. From your perspective, what are the most common misalignments that you see between the sales and delivery teams? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think that it's interesting. So you hit a couple things there, and I'll get back to the sales thing. But for Techletics, yeah, we've been around for 13 years. Really, the first 10 years that we were around was R&D, right? Like we were trying to figure out, okay, hey, we got a big project in, I would say first big project we ever got in, right? Is this guy, it's a bunch of crushed up hard drives where we decommissioned a multi-million-dollar Teradata system and replaced it with like a, $100,000 Hadoop system, right? Um, but we've been around for a long time, but what we did for about the first decade was we were very strategic in the projects that we would take on so that we could proof out the fact that we were going to take people that had no IT background and build them into careers, right? So the reason I say that is, when you get this, the sales has changed for us so much over the years, like what we're trying to get out of sales and how intensive we're working with that. So it's only been like the past 2 years really that we've started trying to scale this thing up and get a little more aggressive with marketing and internal and external sales forces and everything. But what I'll say is to answer the question on, the challenges with that are alignment. I think if you don't have sales and in my business, right? And software services. So in software services, there's points in that sales cycle where you need technical expertise. There's points in that sales cycle where technical expertise is not a good thing. You know what I mean? You don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what's important is you've got really strong communication and alignment on that. And if you don't, boy, that's a big challenge. Like there's a lot of inefficiency in the process. There's a lot of missed opportunities that you run into. So
That's an interesting topic you touched base on actually about the alignment is it comes with clarity, right? So, you need to provide clarity to your team or
sure.
like your team members to what you guys are delivering to specific customer and what are your expectations and what's the alignment. I know there's sales team and there is a delivery team and sometimes sales team over I've seen from my experience, sales team over promises where the delivery team struggles with.
Yeah.
My follow-up question is like let's say, can you share like a real world example? And I mean, you don't have to name like obviously the company or whatsoever, where a sales to delivery misalignment almost like derailed the project. And what specific steps you or your team took to get back on track?
I think we've been we've been pretty fortunate in it, and we've been small and nimble enough where we can stay, hey, I'm not a 200 person shop or anything like that. I don't have a dozen salespeople out there, right? So it's easier to stay in alignment. But to your point, and I'll see this one all the time is, if you've got a salesperson that is heads down and really cranking out, new opportunities and trying to identify new leads and getting those. having those initial conversations. Like a lot of times the goal is they got to have a quick conversation and then move to
Mhm.
the next step, right? Well, a lot of times, and I can think of a specific example for this, where I would have, a salesperson would call me up and say, "Hey, hey, we're talking about, whatever, right? So some new project or something that we're doing." And then, "Oh yeah, also had a conversation with customer XYZ this morning," right? And they're over here working in this technology and this and that, but they think there could be another opportunity doing SQL development or something. And that could be a good opportunity for us. And we're going to keep touching on that, right? And then I'd go back and I'd say, yeah, but what about the thing that they were doing over there? You said, let's say their whole business, right? What about that? Well, I don't know. I didn't even think about that because we're talking about, trying to find developers for this. And I'm like, yeah, but we do other development too. So see what I'm saying? Like that's an example.
Yeah.
If you had better communication on that piece, then the tech could be like, hey, yeah, like you're looking at this role for this company, but also like, hey, this is a specialty for us. Like we could be working on some of this stuff too. So
Mhm.
like I said, better
I
tighter.
hear you. Yeah, it sounds like one of the advantages of being a little smaller, like a close-knit
Yeah,
team, is that sales and delivery still in sync almost by default.
yeah.
Like, as
Well, and
your guy calls you
well, here's something else. Here's something else with that, right? CRM. Well, what CRM are you familiar with?
Salesforce.
Salesforce, right? Okay. All of your sales team has an account in Salesforce, right? How much of your delivery team has accounts in Salesforce?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Not
I don't have any. Yeah.
not a lot, but talking about that, how important, talking about how important alignment is between sales and delivery. Phew, boy, it sure would be good for delivery to have roles in there, and then anytime a new lead is booked, to say, "Hey, I talked to this lead, they're in this kind of company, we talk about this role," to the point where if delivery could look at that and be like, "Hey, that's really interesting. Here's a
Mm.
different angle." It's one of those things that we skip over for that, and a lot of the reason is like license costs. Oh, well, we don't want to double our license costs, but you know what? If doubling that license cost results in, two new opportunities, maybe
Yeah, why not?
strategically it's worth it, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, very, very important. Yeah. By being a small team and having such communication internally, I feel like staying strategic is the most important thing
oh yeah.
because, are there any specific you touched base on the CRM and how your sales team actually communicates and collaborates with the delivery team? Like as an internal as a co-founder, are there specific tools or systems you personally recommend like for ensuring a smoother transition from one to another, from sales to delivery?
Yeah, we use HubSpot. HubSpot's a good one for us. If you get to a certain size, I see a lot of people outgrow that, and then they move to a Dynamics or they move to Salesforce or something else for that.
No.
But yeah, like I said, that's where if you've got your CRM configured the right way, you've got a process in place where you have an event triggered that says a sale gets to a certain point, and then you kind of click a button or have a trigger set up where it can send that off to somebody on the onboarding or delivery side, right? To go ahead and no, they need to take the baton and keep moving on down the road. But
Yeah. Has there been any instances when, for example, let's say there was a misalignment from like sales team has from overpromised on something and you guys were not and you guys under delivered, or like if there has there been have you guys, because most of the industry trends that I'm noticing is there's overpromise and under deliver from the other side,
yeah,
and at the end of the day when it's delivered to customer, it's like it's not what they were expecting. So how would you suggest, if you haven't had that example, how would you recommend other companies of your guys' size to
well,
actually
this is
uh,
not going to be a popular answer on that one probably, but ours is, and it's fortunate because, hey, I'm a co-founder and I work on delivery, right? So what's nice about that for me is the the proposals that go out are driven by the delivery side, right? Like the sales side kind of will frame it up, but then I don't have the sales guys producing an SOW, for instance, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm going to produce, or one of my other people, we had people on the delivery side are going to produce an SOW, and then that's going to, get sent back out through the sales side. But, the delivery that's promised is going to come from delivery, right? The sales side might frame it up, but at the end of the day, it's like the different branches of government, right? We gotta have checks and balances on that.
It seems that the communication and from what I'm hearing, the alignment is a pretty strong suit for Tekletics.
Yeah.
I want to switch the gears a bit and talk about how you guys apply that same collaborative approach to working with the clients, especially when they might not have the same internal cohesion.
Yeah.
Like this shifts the focus could you elaborate, for example, how does the client onboarding process works, like setting expectations early, or like tools or framework that that you guys use with customers?
Yeah. Yeah. So onboarding and then into tooling and communication. So onboard, how's onboarding look, right? So typically when we get a project, right? So we've got a partnership with the Department of Labor and then Arizona State University, right? So essentially, what we do is we'll go out, we'll talk to a customer, we'll identify what the stack looks like with the customer. We'll go back to ASU, we'll put together a training curriculum for that person. We'll hire the people in. We get paid by the Department of Labor for the people to go through the training on this,
Okay.
and then we'll go out, we'll hire in the senior subject matter experts that are going to mentor them and everything. And then we get to work. They get done with the training, everybody hits the ground, we start running, right? But so that's essentially the process that we follow to go in. Um tool from a tooling perspective, right? This is one where, a decade ago we were trying to build this kind of like a boot camp, right? But it was more tailored to the customer because they were all a little bit different. And then we kinda got out of that, and we were like, "Yeah, but, like, they're too different to kind of make them fit into this mold, right? We gotta
Yeah.
be more
Yeah.
flexible with that." So,
Definitely.
that's where, project-wise, we adapt the tooling, right? If
Change it.
if somebody's using ClickUp for project management, well, hey, we'll do ClickUp. If somebody's wanting to use Jira for that, we'll use Jira. We have our own internal tooling that we'll offer as a default to our customers. If they don't have the environment set up to do it, we have our own stuff that we can run it through, but we'll be flexible. We'll meet them wherever they need to be met on projects. So flexibility is a big one for us there. And then part of that is, for the delivery, throughout the delivery, we'll set up the cadences, right? For when we're going to have check-ins on projects or whatever else, and the goal for us is, you kind of hear a theme from me here, right? Is communication super important. So we'll say, hey, we're going to talk as much as you can stand, right? Like, as we want to be talking all the time, and make sure that something's not going off the rails here at some point. And if it does, inevitably that's the thing with projects, right? Like, we're doing this work because it's hard or it's something brand new. If there's some reason why we're coming in to help. So, the expectation from me is at some point something weird's going to happen in that project. And the earlier I can catch it, the easier it is to get it back on the tracks. You know what I mean? So more communication more frequently is kind of the name of the game with the customers, making sure that you've got kind of those feedback loops coming in all the time.
Hmm. No, I see that. And that's very interesting. You mentioned that you guys pretty much adapt to whatever clients are using.
Whatever.
And it sounds like you have some pretty diverse team where people are, have I would say, have multiple tools like under their belt. So I like to say working with people is the most grateful, at the same time is the most most difficult thing to do. So like I want to hear, how do you deal with like different personalities, different people, especially when you're putting them in the projects?
Yep.
Because you should kind of consider their skill set and as well as some of the adaptability, right? Like you said, you guys are using Jira or some other project management tool. Like, what is your approach as a CEO dealing with people when putting them on the projects and assigning them some specific tasks?
Yeah. I I don't want a cookie cutter in people, right?
Yeah.
Number 1. Here's what I demand, right? When I bring people in, they've gotta like, a lot of times I say, "I don't even care what the resume says," right? Like, hey, if you got development experience, whatever this tooling is, great, right? It's kinda icing on the cake. But the demand is strong work ethic and an interest in technology, and whatever the technology is that we're working on. I have to see that out of the person that I hire. The rest of it is, hey, we'll get there with the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's you get the right kind of person into it, and the rest of it just kind of it starts going.
Nice, nice. I want to open the floor for some of the open discussions, Casey. Is there any pain points that you think like you guys are facing in this industry currently, like especially post recession? As we know, IT industry was in recession from 2023 since like mid 2024. What are the challenges you guys are facing in your industry? What are the challenges that you're seeing and you guys are currently dealing with actively?
Yeah, I was AI, good and bad, right? And like to your last question, you're talking about diverse teams and
Yeah,
everybody, right? That's
yeah,
hey, I get the people in. And the generally, what's interesting is when you get people in that have strong work ethic and an interest in tech, like they can do whatever. You know what I mean? Those are the
yeah.
kind of people that, hey, you want them to do report dev, do report dev. If you want them to do DevOps, do that. If you want to do AI, they could do that. They just need, to get geared into that direction. But to what's the challenge, right? Well, AI, right? So it's good and bad because I say now, like, it's pivoted. I bet a third of our work this year is, custom built AI, agentic AI, just building out all these custom built monsters that we've got running around out there. But then the challenge for that is it's kind of a moving target because it's a bleeding edge tech, and
Hmm.
the customers are still trying to figure out their footing and what tooling they wanna use on some of these things, right? So you've got, oh, hey, we're going to go down the road with this platform and we want to base our integrations off of this. And then 6 months down the road, well, we talked to the board and the board doesn't like that. And we need to switch directions on that. And then we need to be able to pivot to that. So I think it's a challenge on the delivery side, right? And for sure, I think it's a challenge on the sales side. I don't know how much of that you see, but
I see that there is no one size fits all AI. So, like you said, customers are coming back and like we want to like there is so many AIs coming out right now. Every time I read a lot of newspapers in tech industry, like I myself, I'm a developer. I come from the development background, and I imagine a lot of developers are empowered by using AI, but then customers, people who don't know how to use, and they wanted to do it all, and there is no one size fits all AI. Like
nope.
you want a sales AI, then you need to use some, the AI that's trained on the sales and generating leads. You want to use like a AI that manages your clients or CRM, then you're gonna use a different.
Yeah. Well, and I don't so tell me what you see of this, but when I talk to people in the sales side these days, right? AI is hurting things, right?
Yeah,
I talked to a guy a while back and that's what his thing was. He was like, he said LinkedIn and email sales, outbound sales are dead. He said because there's
yeah.
so much AI out there that you can't sift through the noise, right? So there's just so much noise that's going out there in the market now.
It's a great question, and I want to answer it to you. So yes, there is a lot. Like I've seen people like, have you heard of UGC content?
Yeah.
It's basically, like you don't need influencers anymore because AI can do it all. Like I've seen an influencer on a social media with 100,000 or 200,000 followers, and it's all AI. That's not a, there is some guy sitting in Asia or some other country and just managing that girl's account and not existing account. But anyways, back to your answer to your question is you gotta be a little more. You gotta think outside of the box and because when everyone goes to one route, then you want to go a different route. Because if I'm a customer and I'm getting hit by 10 people with the same content, then that's the content that I'm avoiding. I know it's something that I don't want to do. I do have a few suggestions in the and in my back pocket, and I mean we can perhaps stay back in the after
Yeah,
the
cool.
or we finalize the call and talk about it. Um, or actually, yeah, I'd like to talk about it. But is there any other? We're coming to an end of a podcast almost. I mean, I really enjoyed the conversation. I love how your guys' team is aligned and you guys have a great communication. Sounds like you hold your team very closely and very like accountable, and you demand probably the best out of them as you do for yourself.
Yeah.
So I can see where it comes into place. Was there anything else you would like to suggest before we wrap the episode for the viewers?
I would just say that, I mean, just, in closing on the Tekletics side, right? Like, we got a lot of experience in just about every kind of tech and industry that you can think of at this point with this model, where you can, build out resources and take on mission critical work at, really an offshore rate is what we come into it with. So that's one part. And then the other part is I'll say, if somebody wants to go to tekletics.com/contact, if you're listening to this, right, and you're thinking, man, I'd love to have an IT career, but yeah, hey, somebody told me that hey, I probably am not the right fit, but I did this, I built this script the other night and I thought it was a lot of fun and I think I did a pretty good job on it. You're probably exactly the kind of person I want in this program. So go to techlegs.com/contact and
Perfect. Thank you, Case. And where do our listeners can find you actually? Are you having a social media yourself or
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. It's about the only thing I do, but if somebody goes out there on
okay.
LinkedIn and looks up TechLegs Casey Fox, you'll find me. And then other than that, techletics.com/contact. You'll get me there too.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Casey, for joining us today and sharing your insights. For our listeners, remember friction in sales to delivery process isn't just an operational issue. It's a growth limiter. Like the sooner you identify and notice it, the more consistently you can deliver the results. For now, thank you everyone. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and keep turning your ideas into impact.